Daily observation in places where intemperance prevails illustrates the wrath of God against this sin. It soon destroys the bodily health of the inebriate, for it is the fruitful parent of disease in almost every form, as the united voice of physicians testifies. How many firm and vigorous constitutions does it bring, even in youth, to the wreck of a premature and wretched old age? How many thousands die yearly by this tremendous scourge? There have been many estimates as to the number in our own country that die annually by this plague. The lowest is 30,000. Who can think without horror of such a waste of human life for the base, momentary, and almost imperceptible gratification of dram drinking? But all this is far from being the greatest evil which it works. Of all the sins committed by man, none so directly and immediately deranges the intellect. The drunkard is a madman, literally, as often as he is intoxicated, and every paroxysm weakens the energy of his intellectual powers. It must be so. All experience shows that it is so. Drunkenness is a bodily disease as well as an enormous sin, and as surely as every fit of this disease diminishes the strength of the body, so certainly does every instance of its madness weaken the mind. Among all the faculties of the soul, none suffers more dreadfully than conscience. It is soon drowned in the intoxicating bowl, so that it can no more utter the voice of remonstrance. The continual commission of any known sin tends to corrupt the fidelity of conscience, but perhaps hardly any other equal to intemperance. The reason is that the understanding cannot, in the state of drunkenness, perform its regular functions. And however it may be accounted for, this sin is a most fruitful parent of all others. It is the great feeder of gaols and penitentiaries, of theaters and houses of ill fame, and of litigious lawsuits. In all these modes it is a great and fell destroyer of the souls of men, the great corrupter of morals and the object of divine loathing and detestation. These appalling evils, as we have said, have not been confined to the openly ungodly world. They have come into the church. Ministers of religion have fallen before them. Ruling elders have been degraded, and many professors have become a reproach to religion. Many young men, sons of the church, have been led away into the paths wherein destroyers go to return no more, and have brought down the gray hairs of their parents with sorrow to the grave. Until within a few years, these victims of drunkenness were becoming annually more numerous. Now, in view of such undeniable facts, we would gravely and solemnly ask conscientious Christian men and women what ought to be done. What ought you to do? Fold the hands in silence and despair as if the case were hopeless? Utter no reproofs and take no measures for reform, lest peradventure the sons of some professors would be found guilty of the enormous sin in the practice and the manufacture and trade in intoxicating drinks, not according to the gospel. We know that God has furnished us with an approved example in the instance of Jonadab, the son of Rechab, and his sons in Jeremiah 35. He commanded his sons to drink neither wine nor strong drink. They obeyed him, and God blessed them in that obedience. Surely we are not permitted, as some friends of intemperance would have us believe, to suppose that this command of Jonadab was arbitrary, that he had no good reason for it. This would be shamefully to trifle with the sacred volume. The evil of intemperance was greatly prevalent in Israel, as is evident from the passage quoted above, from the prophecy of Isaiah, and from the allusions to it by other prophets. Jonadab was led by the Spirit of God to employ a means which must prove effectual for the preservation of his family from the baleful evil. God has recorded this for our example. It is a divine warrant to abstain altogether from the use of intoxicating liquors when intemperance is very prevalent. With such an example before us, no Bible believer, we think, will have the hardihood to affirm that total abstinence from such drinks is wrong. If it be, Jonadab and his sons did wrong, but they did not, for God approved them in their doing. But were there no express divine approbation of total abstinence, it could not be proved to be wrong, for there is no command to drink either wine or strong drink. The Apostle Paul supposes a case in which he would totally abstain for his whole life from the use of meat. But we go farther and affirm that total abstinence is, in the present state of society, a duty incumbent on every friend of temperance. We have proved that so to abstain is not sinful, where all those who are now called temperate drinkers to cease from the use of all intoxicating liquors, it is perfectly evident that the whole evil world would be reformed, at least on the death of the last who is now a drunkard. No man ever, hereafter, would become a drunkard. To effect with perfect certainty so great a reformation, is it not a duty for every man to deny himself whatever little gratification there be in the use of these intoxicating drinks? But we further argue that out of a regard to personal safety, it is a duty totally to abstain. No man who swallows intoxicating potions daily can be sure that he will not become a drunkard. Others, as fair once in reputation as any temperate drinker, are now drunkards. Is it not the duty of every man to avoid the path of danger? Again, duty enjoins on all the disciples of Christ to give no countenance to sin. No man can doubt for a moment that the habitual use by respectable men of what ruins the drunkard encourages him in his self-destruction. How does he reason? He says, all the difference between me and that high professor that witness for the truth is, I drink a little more of what we both love than he does. This I need. Once I drank no more than he does, and he will soon go as far as I now do. If a Christian uses as much as he does and is guiltless, I, who do not profess to be a saint, may take a little more liberty without harm. Thus the frail are made to stumble by what you call your liberty. Farther, there is no hope of the drunkard's reformation, as all admit, unless he totally abstain. Surely the example of the good will be a constant admonition to him to break off, and forever, the destructive habit of indulgence which he has formed. Will he not say to himself, my intelligent, good, and religious neighbor distrusts himself, though he is chargeable with no known vice, and he dare not risk the danger of becoming intemperate by the habitual use of what I know to be hastening my destruction? Besides, where is the common understanding in society, and the matter of fact that drunkards only used intoxicating drinks? Would drunkards continue to proclaim their own shame? A great majority of intemperate men would not be thought drunkards. How few of them, with all their debasement, would be willing to announce themselves in every company drunkards. But if all moderate drinkers would totally abstain, every drunkard would make such enunciation, respecting himself by every glass that he would be seen to drink. Still another argument is that in the present state of the temperance reform, all who do not totally abstain are claimed by the intemperate as of their party. They reason in this matter. Much is said by temperance advocates of the evil of inebriation and of the necessity of total abstinence, but that religious and sensible man who has heard, knows and understands all that can be said, does not believe them. He drinks after all that he has heard, and I shall follow his example. But again, no man should encourage the present enormous waste of property which is made by the use of the intoxicating cup. There are more than $20 millions expended annually on intoxicating drinks. Now, will any good man who fears God and loves his country say that this is a sinless and profitable and wise expenditure? None will. None dare say so. Every man who uses these intoxicating draughts contributes his proportion to this monstrous waste and destruction of the good gifts of God. The sum annually thrown away, and worse than thrown away, is equal to the loss in New York by the great conflagration of 1836, and is a greater evil, for that made no man a drunkard, no man a maniac, no man a profligate, no wife a widow, no children fatherless. Would it not be sinful for any man to contribute to a fund for the kindling of such a fire in any of our cities? Does not every temperate drinker contribute to what is a much greater evil? We trust every unprejudiced reader will admit that these arguments must amply prove that every one, and especially every Christian, should resolve totally to abstain from intoxicating drinks as a beverage, and act upon his resolution. If a man should thus resolve and act, he ought not to furnish his neighbor with what he rejects himself. Quote, woe to him that giveth his neighbor drink, that puttest thy bottle to him, and markest him drunken also, that thou mayest look on their nakedness. Thou art filled with shame for thy glory. Unquote. Habakkuk 2, verses 15 and 16. Could ever this woe be more directly incurred than by the retailing of intoxicating drinks in taverns and grog shops? Never. They are the very centers of action, the generators and nourishers of drunkenness in all its most abominable forms. How can any one who daily deals out the destroying potion acquit his conscience before God and man? Do not all such know well that they make drunkards? Do they not know assuredly that they take from the labor those wages which ought to be appropriated to the support of his family, and not to the gratification of a base appetite? How can a conscientious man sell to a poor man on Saturday the rum which he has every reason to believe will make him and his family drunk on the Sabbath? But if the reasons contained in the former part of this article on the duty of total abstinence have convinced any reader, he does not need argument against the retailing of the poison. There's another class of dealers who do no less harm than the retailers. We refer to the wholesale dealers who supply the retailers. It will be sufficient to present this part of the trade in one of its aspects only. There are many retailers who are known to desecrate the Sabbath by prosecuting their unhallowed work of making drunkards on that holy day. The larger dealer replenishes their haunts of vice, having a full knowledge of the work of ruin which it is destined to perform on the Lord's day. Is that man guiltless? We put it to his conscience and leave it there. It is gratifying to be able to state that the supreme judicatories of the Reformed Presbyterian Church in Scotland and in Ireland and the United States have denounced the traffic as immoral and recommended its immediate abandonment by all under their care.